Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us here at Zoom and also at YouTube streaming. This is second seminar on the regulation and adaptation of the artificial intelligence and STI sector. And here we are here some funding agencies of the Americas that organizes these seminars. This is the second seminar, as you may well know. We had a first seminar on the 10th of October on research security, and this is the second seminar that we are organizing on artificial intelligence. So without further ado, I would like to give a floor to Sean Barron. He is a member of the Executive Support Working Group, and he will talk about context of these seminars and explain why we are here today. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sharapia. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the second seminar of our 2024 series. The first, as Sharapia said, was on October 10th. It was on research security. Today's seminar is on artificial intelligence. This is our fifth year. The scientific seminars are organized as an activity under the Global Research Council, the GRC. My name is Sean Barron. I am an international policy advisor for the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada, NSERC. I am also a member of the Executive Support Group of the GRC. So I will now provide you with a short overview of the GRC. Apologies. There we go. Okay, so the GRC is a virtual organization dedicated to promoting the sharing of data and best practices for high-quality collaboration among funding agencies worldwide. We are comprised of over 100 funding agencies from all over the world. Our vision is that research and innovation play a leading role in providing the solutions that society needs to overcome the global and interconnected challenges of our time. Think climate change, biodiversity loss, migration, and so on. Our mission is to work in partnership to create the conditions in which international research, collaboration, and cooperation can thrive. The best science, the advancements that we need, requires participation from all of us. The GRC is divided into 5 regions: the Americas, Asia Pacific, Europe, Middle East and North Africa, and the sub-Saharan regions. In the Americas, we have representation on the GRC governing board. The governing board is comprised of 12 members, 3 are from the Americas, and the president, or the chair of the governing board, is NSERC's president, Alejandro Adam. The executive support group is similarly divided, comprised of 12 members, 3 from the Americas. I am one of those members. And we have 3 working groups. They are the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion working group, the Responsible Research Assessment working group, and the Multilateral Engagement working group. Agencies have been working together over the last 4 years to fulfill the GRC objectives and vision, create a forum that facilitates research collaboration, discuss topics of local or regional interest, and face the global challenges with local or regional actions and perspectives. In addition, ANID Chile is part of the GRC Sustainable Development joint call that was launched in 2022 between 11 agencies worldwide. The previous scientific seminars, as I mentioned, we're in our 5th year. We started in 2020. with a COVID-19 virtual seminar. In 2021, we looked at health systems, research infrastructure, and education, again, around COVID-19. In 2022, we presented our instruments for international collaboration, and we prepared a report. Last year, we had a look at international cooperation around AI and open science. There have been six agencies that have pulled together these scientific seminars, and they're on your screen in front of you. And as I mentioned, this year we're on October 10th, research security and integrity, and today we're looking at guidance and adaptation of AI in the STI sector. So finally, the intent of the virtual seminars is to align with the GRC objectives and vision, strengthen research collaboration in the Americas, bring together actors in the research security and AI space within the region, and provide the opportunity to report and share our experiences. So with that, I'll turn it back to Sharapia, and I wish everybody a successful seminar today. Thank you. Back to you, Sharapia.
Thank you, Sean. Just to let some announcement, we have a document. We share the link in the chat in Zoom and in YouTube. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the documents that we prepared for that seminar. We are here, as I said, as mentioned, Sean, 7 agencies from 6 countries. And this seminar is also organized with representatives of researchers from all of these countries. Now, I would like to invite Mike Lam from the NSERC of Canada, and who is a Chief Data Officer. And he will talk about IE and its role in STI, policies on IE use and IE applications for funding agencies. Mike, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sharapia. Welcome, everyone. I'm very thankful for the privilege to provide some opening remarks for this very important seminar. Just a bit of introduction about myself. As mentioned, I'm the Chief Data Officer at NSERC. And just some background to form some context. So I'm a trained chemist. And my life as a research chemist was a long time ago, and I've been with the public service over 20 years, and the last 14 years or so with NSERC. And the reason I mention this is because I want to highlight that I'm not a computer scientist. We have our esteemed panel with a number of computer scientists and experts in the field of AI. But my context is probably not unfamiliar to you all in the audience. I enjoy scientific reading, scientific research. I do this when necessary, when developing policies at NSERC, and especially in AI space. I frantically try to keep up with the technology, but I'm not a computer scientist, a mathematician. So concepts become complex, and we can all relate that perhaps we don't have the time to understand the technical details of everything. So that makes it really difficult to navigate AI. So let me take you back to November 30th, 2022. And I mention this because this is the day that ChatGPT 3.5 was released out into public and wild. And so as a tech geek, I was really interested, and I gave it a try, and many of you probably did as well. And it was really impressive. And so, you play around with it, and there's some very specific use cases that are applicable to the work that we do. But we could probably tease out that, hey, this isn't totally a human response. And so, although the disruption, the technology disruption was meaningful, I think at the time we were, using it for to play around with it, and but still, it signaled an advance in technology that we haven't seen, in the past. So I'll fast forward to March 2023, and this is when ChatGPT 4 came out. So the big difference between 4 and 3.5 is that 3.5 had 170 billion parameters, and ChatGPT 4, when released, was trained on 1.7 trillion parameters. So without getting into the data science associated with it, that's an order of magnitude in complexity of the model. So in a very short period of time, less than 1 year, we had an order of magnitude difference in capability of a generative AI model. That's very significant. So if we use the analogy of ChatGPT as an assistant, digital assistant, let's say ChatGPT 3.5 is at the high school level. We're getting into the university type level now in ChatGPT 4. And apologies to computer scientists for minimizing this explanation. So ChatGPT 4, from funding agency perspective, and similar type models, they become now more useful. But concerns now start to bubble up on how did we, how did we create those parameters now to create this model, and how accurate is it? And now the responses it gives are starting to become more and more human-like. Fast forward again. This is something that is fairly recent. So I think it was August or September 2024. And OpenAI released again another iteration of the model called O1. And O1 is a model that takes the other models, but it has more capability to reason. And to illustrate the capabilities of this, I read a bit from Fields medalist. This is in mathematics, Terence Tao. He's a very accomplished mathematician, and this is his quote. So he used ChatGPT O1 to work on mathematical problems. And what he said was the experience seemed roughly on par with trying to advise a mediocre but not completely incompetent graduate student. However, this was an improvement over previous models whose capability was closer to an incompetent graduate student. So here again, we're going from, this is about a year after ChatGPT 4 was released in the wild. And now we have an assistant that's capable of a PhD-like capability in terms of reasoning and thinking. So where does this bring us as a funding agency? So if we're right now, we're at a pretty pivotal juncture where these technologies now intersect with some of the critical decision making that we make daily. So if you think on the preparation of grant proposals, these tools are very likely being used, and the outputs are starting to mimic human type responses and outputs. And so if you think about the cornerstones of our processes, they're all based on peer review. So I don't know about the rest of the countries that are represented at the GRC, but peer review processes at NSERC, they probably haven't changed very much over the last 40 years. Of course, we've modernized with technology, made things administratively more modern, but fundamentally, the peer review process remains the same. Applicants prepare proposals and funding agencies review them. And there's an element of human interaction there that now with the technology and intersection, machines can start to can be part of that. And it's not easy at times to distinguish whether a human is involved or AI is involved. So where do we go from here? And I'm really pleased to be here today to have a two-way conversation with the panelists and the audience to better understand how you're dealing with this and also your concerns, because there are many. So, for example, our governments have, I would characterize it as they're scrambling a little bit to develop policies, and rightfully so, because the technology, as I illustrated previously, is changing very, very quickly. So often policies are developed, and we'll be talking about more about these policies and regulations later on in the session, but they lag behind the technology. So policies that are centered around technologies at the level of ChatGPT 3.5 will be different from policies where you have models that start to mimic human outputs. So I hope we can have a meaningful conversation about where we are in the policies and where to focus. The next thing that I'd like to mention in terms of concerns about AI are regarding bias and fairness. So these are paramount in funding agencies and principles that I'm fairly sure all the funding agencies that are represented here today hold very, very important in their peer review processes. Now, the problem with AI is its response is going to be dependent on the data that it is trained on. And so if these models are trained by other organizations, for example, OpenAI and ChatGPT, we don't have a transparent look in terms of the data that's being used, and thus biases may not be apparent when we have outputs from such models. So a conversation about that and then how do we mitigate biases and identify them will be really important. I'm the chief data officer, so my first job is about data. I'll mention that data is fundamental. Good data going into the AI models is very important, and so at NSERC we have quite a bit of data, administrative data that we can use to train models, and and we're fortunate in that regard. But I just want to stress, and we'll be talking about this more, I'm sure, that data quality is really important when considering the use of AI in our respective funding agencies. And what's really important too is that data privacy and security are critical concerns. Best practices and talking about the best practices, around security and privacy as it relates to AI is a really important step for funding agencies to consider when looking at either employing AI in our respective agencies or the expectations of our community in terms of data and data privacy. With that, I'll finish up with an important point that today's seminar is going to highlight, that collaboration is key. If we all work individually, it becomes very difficult to navigate all the challenges with AI. With collaboration, however, we can share, our practices. We can share potential for infrastructure, code. We're committed to open science, open access, and AI is not is part of that conversation. So now I hope that today we can have some meaningful conversation and follow up with increased collaboration so that we can navigate this really interesting time. So with that, I'll turn it to Dorothy, who will be moderating the session. And the floor is yours, Dorothy.
Thank you so much, Michael. That's a beautiful introduction. I'm honored to be here. I'm from the National Science Foundation in the United States, and I have many titles, but I will say that, like Michael, I started out as a software developer before there was an internet. And so the world has changed quite a bit since I've joined this service. Right now, my titles include Chief Data Officer, like Michael, and also the Chief AI Officer, which is a new title. Each agency in the United States has to have one of each of those. And I have another title, which is also required, Senior Agency Official for Privacy. So I have a lot of official hats, and I don't feel specifically well trained in any of those fields, except that what I do understand really well is how to maneuver the intricacies of the federal government here, and how to inspire people to cooperate in those areas. So that's really, I guess, my strength. Again, like Michael, the promise of AI is huge, and we'd love to leverage it to its maximum benefits, but it also has an equally sharp downside. And so we're walking the tightrope between the two and trying to make sure that we use AI in the safest possible way to improve our business processes at the National Science Foundation. And also, people have strong opinions. Some people love it, some people hate it, and neither of those feelings are correct. So you will have program officers or reviewers who are skeptical and wondering, how do I validate that there's no AI in this proposal? We have other people asking, well, is it okay for people to write proposals using AI completely? I mean, if you submit it, you own it. Why would we care how you make it happen? So there's a whole long continuum of people that we're trying to maneuver and make some right decisions. My role today is going to be mostly moderator, although I might contribute here and there if I find some interesting points. And I hope you all the panelists, will also do the same. I'm going to ask each of the panelists in order to introduce themselves, and then I have a short set of questions that we're going to walk through. Some people have slides, and we'll pause for moments to let them have their slides up. And then finally, we'll have a Q&A at the end. So to begin, I'd like to ask Gaston to introduce himself. take it away, Gaston.
Well, thank you, Dorothy. I'm very glad and honored to be part in this panel. My name is Gaston. I'm a sociologist from Buenos Aires, Argentina. I'm a researcher at CONICET, which is our national scientific council. And as I said, I'm a sociologist, so I'm interested in the social dimensions of AI and big data, which for me is pretty much the same phenomena. And I'm also researching on how to incorporate all these technical innovations into sociology in the field of what we could call the computational sociology.
Thank you very much. And Lorena, can you introduce yourself? Lower left.
Yes. I thought that it was not my time. Yes, I'm very honored also to be here. My name is Lorena Echeverri. I'm a researcher in computer science at Instituto de Computación at Universidad de la República in Uruguay. I also have another hat because I'm the coordinator of the Masters in Data Science degree here at my university. And I'm also part of CICADA, which is Centro Interdisciplinario en Ciencia de Datos. It's in an interdisciplinary research center here at our university also. And I'm very pleased to be here and to talk about these topics.
Thank you so much. Patricia?
Hello, buen día. Buenas tardes a todas, todos. Hello, thank you also very much. I'm very honored also to be asked to be here with you today to discuss and to share our thoughts and our practices as well. I am an academic. I'm researcher at a communication faculty at University of Chile. So I came from another field. I came from social communication area that for many years has intersection with digital technology. So that's my point to start. I work in that connection between social communications and digital technology. In the last 3 years, I've been involved also in researching about disinformation phenomena, particularly in Chile and Latin America, and that's where for journalism and information studies, AI has become a big issue. But also I'm part of research network here in Latin America that also is seeks answers about the intersection between artificial intelligence and feminist gender studies. So that's where I came from. Thanks very much.
Very, very good. Thank you so much. Fabio, are you?
Hi, hello. Hi.
Hello.
So thanks for having me in the panel. My name is Fabio. I'm a professor here at the Universidade de São Paulo in Brazil. I'm an engineer. I took engineering here and then computer science PhD at Carnegie Mellon, United States. I'm back here since then. I'm now director of a Center for Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning that was created here at the university to sort of put together the various groups that we have. So that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years.
Thank you so much. So we have a really broad spectrum of people here. It's going to be interesting to see if we can even understand each other technically. So I'm going to start by asking Gaston a question, which is, how are you incorporating AI into your work processes? And, tell us a little bit about what outcomes or output you expect from that. Maybe even how you're communicating with your staff about these changes.
Sure. Let me share screen. I don't know if you can see my slides there.
It's perfect. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, I think that some of the key drivers in incorporating AI are those that Michael already mentioned when he was doing his presentation. I think that the big drivers are pretty much collaboration and diversity, which means trying to include an interdisciplinary view with interdisciplinary teams, of course, and also to try to engage with the communities that are involved in the inclusion of these technologies. Also, we should try to adhere to best practices, which are usually related to data documentation, and of course, trying also to engage in a critical dialogue, and with trying also to educate our colleagues about what AI can do and what AI cannot do, and keep in mind specifically the limitations and the biases that are part of that. I think that for me, I think that the most important part is that although we may be, although I think it's natural to be fascinated by AI and also to put all our efforts and interest in trying to understand AI, I think that the real important part is to try to put ourselves in the focus. That's trying to always being conscious that the important part is the social framework or the social context in which AI is developed and in which it operates. So I think that the real good question could be, how could we ethically evaluate and guide our institutions and our practices in order to incorporate AI? And I think that luckily, we can turn to the experience that we already have in the research community about research ethics, because I think that there is some clear continuity between the ethical principles that we have developed for scientific research and the core challenges that we are now facing with AI. Like, for example, within research ethics, we usually adhere to 4 principles, which are respect for people. That's why we have the informed consent gold standard, for example. We also try to adhere to beneficence, to equity, and transparency. And I think that those are pretty much the 4 big challenges that we have in AI, which is respect for individuals' data and privacy. That's also responsibility. That's trying to be aware of the context. Also the issue about justice, which I will try to argument that's the most important thing when discussing biases, and also trying to achieve transparency. So if to better respond to your question, how do we incorporate this? Well, I think that we should try to incorporate this in a reflexive way, and always keeping in mind that this is not neutral technology, that this is a technology that includes a lot of social dimensions and includes a lot of also political values and lots of biases that we should always try to make transparent.
That's wonderful. So does anyone want to add to that for the moment? I have one thought, which is similar at NSF, which is that we went back to the basics when trying to regulate or figure out the best uses of AI at NSF. We also went back to the same principles that guide all of our other decision making, and tried to see, although this is a shiny object, it's very fancy and it looks like it's different, in a sense, it's really just the same principles apply. So we've also done that same thing. Has anyone diverged from that? Anyone tried to do anything different with their policies? Okay.
Can I?
Yes. Please.
Thank you, Dorothy. Yes. No, I want to probably to complement something that also Gaston has put very, very well. But I think, for example, here I'm talking about our local experience, for example, or even the debate that all these start to I think in many of the social science, in the field of art or humanity or the area where I move, the main question has arisen in the recent years has what kind of AI we are talking about. I mean, what AI is that? Is the general one? Because that's, I think, for me, is the crucial point. when we also open the opportunity to make this dialogue more multidisciplinary. Because as you mentioned at the beginning, many of my colleagues, for example, they say, well, I feel now I feel I'm not going to be able to enter in this because we are not data science or we are not computer expert, etc. So all those questions are, I think, as main issues also with the questions that I mentioned before is what kind of AI we are talking about. Is the general, for example, in my area, we're talking about specifically the generative, which is related to ChatGPT and etc. And indeed, for example, in fields like ours that connect between society, culture, creating new things, creating content, creating new narratives, but also studying the social impact about the uses of technology and now the AI in the information. For example, all what I mentioned before, this information has become a major field of studies in our countries because today is the main issue for our democracies. So, for example, that also in some point help you to also to create this framework. We are talking about what kind also of regulation, for example, regulation in technology, particularly in information or society, also has boundaries because also you need to have all the time keep in mind about also what Gaston mentioned. When we talk about ethics, that means to review, for example, in our field, some protocols, some methodology. That means to incorporate, for example, they need to be more eloquent about the protocols that, for example, allow to use some AI or generative AI to do some things, for example. We are also thinking about, for example, how much it changed the teaching and also the framework when you, for example, teach methodology. And probably we came from faculties or realities where we use still old framework of methodology in social science. So what does it mean to incorporate these digital and AI tools? So for me, it's also that important part of the dialogue and to start the debate.
Yes, absolutely. So, AI spans the spectrum, really. Some people think robotic process automation is the most primitive AI. And AI kind of has crept into all of our worlds gradually, but it wasn't until the shock of generative AI that I think the light really shone on this subject. One of the things that we found to be very important is to continue because we can't, and this is something I think Gaston touched on, is it's very difficult to explain, to make AI explainable. So in order to ensure appropriate use, one critical principle is that there always has to be a human in the loop. So it's not so much what AI did you use to make this decision, it's is it okay to make this decision using AI? And no final award decision can be made that way. So we made certain parameters around protecting the result as opposed to fully understanding what was going on under the covers. Thank you. So let's talk now for a minute about bias in AI. And I was wondering, let me start with, we have several discussants are interested in this. I'm going to start by asking Lorena, because we haven't heard from you yet, what you're thinking about bias.
Oh, thanks. And actually, I have some slides, but when I hear my colleagues talking, the conversation goes to another
That's
field,
okay.
and it's very tempting to let it flow, but I let it flow later. Okay, so actually, when I prepare my slides on bias, I decided to consider these two scenarios, the scenarios of classical or traditional AI, because we are more familiar with those phenomena in that field. but also some comments on generative AI biases, okay? And aligned with what Gaston previously said, most of the biases in AI systems, in both flavors of AI, are due to human biases mostly, or sometimes not directly by human biases, but because of our cognitive biases or our, I don't know, political and knowledge frameworks, like our the chain of thoughts that follow the decision to put something that it's an automatization in a process that typically involves humans. Okay, we don't talk about fairness or bias if it's not human related. We could, but we probably are more concerned about the decisions that take people into account. So most of the biases are caused by us, by us directly or indirectly. It's not something magical. It's not something that happens because of the technology itself. In conventional AI, for example, there are lots of experience and experiments on how typical classification or prediction systems can introduce unfair behavior. I'd like to cite this work by Enzo Ferrante, who is from Argentina, and other people. This is it's a work from some years ago where they did quite a simple observation that if you don't have a very well balanced set, for example, when training biomedical classification systems that were trying to classify to detect cancer tumors in the thorax, and the system had a very bad performance for women. And they discovered that the problem was not enough training data considering women with breasts. So the system it started to confuse breast with tumors, which is when you see the result, this is so obvious. How didn't anyone consider this? So the key with this, and this is quite a phenomenon that it's well known, it's that we have a lot of frameworks to analyze and to measure fairness and bias and to quantify it. And my main takeaway is that we should measure things. Maybe we can't get, maybe no, it's almost not feasible sometimes to get rid of bias, but we have to get used to measuring and to take this into account and to tell people, okay, this is my solution. It's not perfect. I know that these are the biases and these are the behaviors that my solution has, which is more than we have today. Okay, it's not explainable AI, but it's making solutions more transparent. But when we talk about generative AI, there is a lot of things that we have to take into account, because this kind of classification of traditional AI systems maybe have a not so broad impact into the life of people. Okay, my main concern with generative AI solution is that they try not by, I don't know, no on purpose, but they reinforce and homogenize the representation of the world. Okay, the diversity, it tends to be underrepresented, because that's why it's diversity. And these big solutions train from data, and it's the classical problem of the rich get richer and the poor get poorer from all recommender systems. Okay, I have two examples on this. This is also research from colleagues from Argentina, Luciana Benotti, Laura Alonso Alemán, because that we can prove that these large language models have a bias, in particular with gender languages. Okay, because most people in Latin America spoke the gender languages. Portuguese and Spanish are gender languages. And so typical methodologies also that are used to try to measure polarization, not polarization, but bias in natural language processing are not so directly applied here. This group of people has a lot of work on this. I recommend reading this work. And also we have problems with algorithms that generate images, okay? This work is also very good. It's based on stable diffusion solution, which is one of the generative algorithms. And they actually show that these algorithms reinforce and get a more profound representation of a lot of different biases in images, not also gender bias, racial bias, north and south bias, poor and rich bias, this intersectional concept of bias, which is very difficult to measure. So I don't have solutions. I just have claims. Okay, I think it's a big responsibility for us that we know these things to make claims on these aspects. And I have just a little tiny comment. It's not what we typically consider bias, but a threat also is the bias that we can start to see in where the science is produced. Because using these generative AI technologies is very expensive, and the ability to use them is a restraint to those that have the economical power and the money to buy them. So I think that is also something that we should pay attention to. And so far, so good.
Thank you so much. Gaston or Patricia, do you want to add to that?
Sure. Can I share again?
Sure. I love this notion of it's not perfect. You know, one of the things, well, just as a quick thing, a couple of the statements you made that AI is not perfect. I find it hard for people to accept that AI is not perfect in their business lives. In their personal lives, they can accept that risk, but in business, it's much harder to get past that one. Okay, I'm sorry, Gaston, on to you.
I of course I'm gonna agree with Lorena, with what Lorena just said. I just want to stress perhaps one more detail is that although we can think biases in terms of representation, I think that the key concern in biases is about justice, because at least from my perspective, bias are pretty much systematic inclinations that consistently favor or disfavor some social group. And that's why it usually leads to stereotype reinforcement, discrimination, but in most of the cases, just to unjust decision making. And I think we should, just like we should perhaps see the different types of AIs, and knowing that different type of AIs give us different challenges, I think that we should also keep in mind that there are different type of biases that are originated in the different phases and the different moments of the AI creation and development, and of course in the data creation that's based in the AI. But for starters, I think we should start by perhaps differentiating errors and limitations and biases. Biases are not exactly errors and in the model. Perhaps the model is actually doing what it was trained to do, but do so with unjust data and with unjust or not audit or not agreed decisions. And as far for the different type of biases, well, there are, of course, biases that originate in pre-existing inequalities. that's pretty much, I think, or one of the cases that Lorena mentioned. That's when data reflects social disparities. I think perhaps the most common example is the Amazon model trained to select or to select curriculum vitae from persons, and that it used to reinforce the glass ceiling effect on women. Then we have all the biases that originate in labeling or bad evaluation of data. That's where when you get the different prejudice of the people who's labeling the data, who's creating the training data sets that get into the subjectivity into the data. I think that perhaps the best example is the case of the ImageNet database that had a lot of descriptions that were clearly a reflection on the Western view. Also, we have the selection and sampling bias, which was the case that Lorena mentioned, the case in which you have subpopulations that are not represented fairly, like the cases of, the case of women in medical data sets, and also the case of Black faces in face recognition databases. Then we have measurement or proxy biases that are pretty much stem from having to use whatever the variable you can use, but not actually the variable that you want to use to represent some phenomena. That happens a lot in the case of phenomena that it's very hard to measure, like crime. You could perhaps use the arrest as a proxy variable, but that of course introduces a whole new set of problems, like in police and justice, for example. And then, of course, you have the curation and also the biases that are introduced by this what's called the red team. That's the team that tries to do some sort of quality control. You have a lot of that in ChatGPT, for example, which is a very over-moderated algorithm that is just trying to always not trying to upset the user, and that introduced a lot of political correctness into the results. Also, I think that although there are no technical biases, we should always keep in mind that generative AI introduces hallucinations. That's a lot in the case of ChatGPT, dependency on prompts, which of course, if we don't have enough education on the part of the users, that could be a big problem. There's also outdated information, out of context replies, overconfidence, and uncritical interaction. I think that's perhaps the most important thing in ChatGPT. It's a great algorithm, but it's not a good critical partner in the conversation. And of course, there are a lot of issues that relate to the lack of grounding in truth and in empathy, which is in that case, well, that's a big technical limitation.
Wonderful, Gaston. Thank you so much. I hope you don't mind. I've been stealing your slides as you speak. So I'd like to ask Patricia to add a little if you have some thoughts.
Yes, well, Gaston and Lorena explained very, very well. Thank you. With the major, I think also debate that we also have, I think, is emerging here in Chile in particular. I think we are going to talk about this later. It's related with the national policy of AI that was discussed the last 3 years, precisely centering the debate in these things, no? And also recognizing that I think one main question that also emerged from this question is, again, when we are talking about AI bias, that means also that we are using models, software systems that are not created or are not developed here in our countries. Probably that's also the main issue. We are talking about that we still are an economy or a countries that use our consumer from international development in this area. So that's one point that emerged very much in the debate about to recognize, Lorena said very well, and of course, in that discipline, for us, is the main issue. All those systems are trained with external databases, where that's main. So, for example, if we are starting to think, it would be different if we train those systems with our national data, for example, with Chilean or Uruguay. We don't know. We are just start to, I think, doing that experiment, but doesn't mean that the bias is going to be eliminated because we are using like more local or more contextualized data or data center. I don't know, in the human person, no, in the diversity. Sorry, that we are. And that's one key issue I think that we also have, we must keep in mind when we talk about the different bias challenges that we are going to face. And of course, I agree what we just also say that, for example, for us also open a huge discussion about also what does it mean in terms of creating from this bias new social gaps. No, we are already countries that struggle all the time with different social gaps. So what does it mean in terms of creating new gaps, new social gaps, educational gaps, cultural gaps, economic? That's the huge, like Gaston says, no, there is in some areas, no, there is terrified to lose their jobs. What does it mean to many careers? For example, are they going to disappear? Are they going to be really replaced by this automatic system of these automatized machines? So all these things also is related with the question about what kind of bias we are starting to see in this discussion.
Thank you so much. So not only are we maybe exacerbating existing bias, but we might be creating new gaps. That's amazing. One thing about the data that we found is that the data has been collected for one purpose and is being used for a different purpose when we train a model on it. And so that is also creating problems with the bias that's embedded in the data. Thank you. And I believe, Paloma, if you don't mind sharing, we've got a question from the audience.
Yes, thank you, Dorothy. In that same topic, we have a question from the audience about, and this is for every panel members that would like to answer, about the possible tension between the need for training AI systems with comprehensive data that represents different regions, realities, cultures, and the eventual risk of giving that data away to improve AI systems that may or may not yet have a commercial purpose.
Does anyone want to try that? Take that?
And we are all nodding like this
Yeah.
because the answer is yes.
Right.
Yes, there is definitely a tension, but it also makes sense to try to do these kind of things. So I think I should mention a project. Some of you may be aware of the LATAM GPT project, which is led mostly by CENIA Chile, but we are from all over LATAM. We are collaborating with this project, where the goal is try to build a GPT model trained from Latin America data. And actually there is a lot of discussion and a nice discussion on which data should we feed this model with. Okay, this also has implications on the regulation comments that we'll make later, because the copyrights. What about the property on data, which is mostly textual data? Okay, well, we are not trying to train a GPT model on tabular data. It's nonsense to try to give numbers. So the sources to train these GPT models with it are, for example, I don't know, the legislation of our countries, all the, I don't know, the notes that are taken in I don't know, in the legislative power, I don't know, lots of texts about our countries and about our particularities that could hopefully lead to something that has more information and may try to capture the particularities of our region. I'm a bit skeptical on that, but I don't know. We are trying, but it's actually attention, definitely.
May I add something about this? I think
Sure.
Lorena actually mentioned the right project, because there's this idea of building something that is led by Senia, and we've been discussing with them, not just using Spanish and Portuguese, but actually indigenous languages. Latin America has many of them, and all of those are basically lost in international efforts. And I think there's a big discussion on which data can be used, and whether it's public data only, which means it's data we can use, but then probably the model will be worse than if we use a lot of data that we cannot use. So I think there's here an opportunity for this sort of forum with funding agencies to sort of discuss how to regulate the use of data. I mean, which data can researchers use? This is not clear, really. Can we actually have standards on? I mean, there are standards for like medical research, right? There are four ethical principles if you do an experiment, but it's not entirely clear what we can do with texts with from indigenous people, copyright regulations. I guess some conversation on that would be useful as people try to get more texts into their own language models.
Thank you. I saw Michael's hand go up. You
Yep.
still interested? And then Patricia?
Yeah, the other panel members have very eloquently articulated what I was going to say, but maybe just to reinforce, I think collaboration is key here, and that what we're talking about is, you know, these general purpose models. I think there's just definitely that tension, but if we have focus on a particular model, and Lorena, you articulated this well, that if there's a use case for something that is very specific and there's collaboration associated with that, then that's an avenue where data sharing, for model training, for code development, is very powerful. And I think those types of activities. I'll mention it later, but organizations such as the GRC, OECD, they can be nexus points to enhance these collaborations, so that data sharing for models, code, that it relieves some of that tension, and so maybe I'll pass it over to was it Patricia who had her hand up?
Yes.
Who probably can articulate some more points.
Thank you, Michael. No, I think this is one of the big question and crucial question that we are facing now. I know the idea, General of LATAM, thanks very much, Lorena, for mentioning it, because also I'm going to point the crucial difference also that our countries here in South America, for example, we are very delay or we have a lack of actualization of our own data regulations, personal data. For example, Chile has been discussing the new privacy and personal data project for about 8 years. This year, we hope that we have a new regulation. Probably this new regulation, even I think personally, must be adapted for the next year, because it's a regulation that probably doesn't even, for example, introduce the idea of biometric data, which is in Chilean regulation, is something absolutely new. But also open, as you mentioned, different levels of understanding of data. For example, in our field, what you mentioned, Lorena, about when you introduce text, I mean, what kind of consideration must we have with that interaction? Because it's the text that one real person introduced in the system. So we, one question that we have is, we consider that as a personal data, for example, because, I don't know, for example, my experience telling to the system, for example, some issues that are related with my political, I don't know, position, health issues, or even, for example, some other, like you say before, Dorothy, daily life, you know? So that emerged also an important question that I think we still are not answering, even if you saw, I don't know, I don't know, for example, also in Chile, I think we are going to talk about this later, but the law, the project of law, the bill that this government present about that, doesn't mention very clearly, even they are trying to introduce the idea of that this kind of controversial are or need a framework about data governance, for example. No, that's also a thing that is emerging in the debate. But the question is very interesting, because we knew that's the problem in our countries, that we are, like I say, like we are not countries that are in position in this moment to claim more rights or to claim a major position, particularly with big companies like OpenAI, for example, in many of the discussion about, for example, how they are going to use the data that we are using every day in the ChatGPT or whatever AI generative. So the question for our, I think, local and national development, it will be the same. How we ensure that this information, that data doesn't has commercial purposes or other purposes. No?
Thank you so much. So let's move on to talk about how we evaluate projects when we're deciding that may include AI in their applications. Fabio, do you have thoughts on this one?
Well, I don't have solutions. I have a few thoughts.
Okay, that's good.
I think there's extensive understanding of how to evaluate projects that deal with data. I mean, this comes from statistics, so it's not a new field. But I think there are too many metrics. And I think generative AI has produced a number of challenges that people are struggling with at this point. I think there are, of course, challenges related to bias. How do you detect bias? How do you detect bias and guarantee that it's fair? Because some biases, as already indicated by Gaston, they come from the data. In some cases, they may be even justified, and you have to be a human to really understand what's going on. But I think there's a point that I would like to make. I think it's a point that has not been made yet, so I will not repeat things that have been said. But I think generative AI introduces a challenge, which is that it can sort of lie, right? I mean, it can say something as in a way of justifying itself that is like a human being justifying himself after the decision is made. And so if you ask that every AI project has to be explainable, I think that that's sort of a weak requirement today, because you can always ask ChatGPT to justify and explain things, and it will explain. And you will never know whether it's explaining anything that is actually happening or not, because it's very opaque and very difficult to know. So I think there is a need for more research on what does it mean to explain an AI system today? And And I will stop there because I don't have a solution, but I think there's a need for more research and more understanding. And I think there are many regulators who are asking for explainable AI at this point and trying to make it a legal requirement, when in fact that is not entirely clear to me. I mean, what does it mean to ask a generative AI to explain is really up in the air. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. Lorena, have you had experience evaluating projects that include AI? And how are you prioritizing that work, or how are you addressing that? I think it's lower left. Oh, look at that.
Not muted anymore. Sorry. This is not the slide I wanted to share. This is the previous one. Yes, I have some experience evaluating projects, and but I have more experience conducting projects. And this is kind of tiro no pé, como dicen los brasileros. Because I will introduce some things that I think that should be evaluated. And so maybe in the future I will be punished by this. First and most important, taking into account all we have said, is considerations on social and ethical implications of the application of AI. Most of the evaluation protocols consider something, at least in my country, something that is you think or you consider that this should go into an ethical board. And sometimes it's not easy to let this decision into the researchers, okay? And sometimes the ethical boards are quite from the traditional ethical point of view on science. And I think that we should improve that or broaden that sense of ethical committees, taking into account these technologies. So this is the first thing. The second thing, and it's a tricky one, I should ask researchers, how and why are you using generative AI in your project? The how question is the most difficult one, because it's somehow related to an idea of open science or reproducibility or something like that. Because if we are starting to have people using generative AI in different research areas and using it and not documenting it, okay, yeah, this is my solution, and I don't give you the prompt or the model or the data set on anything or the context. You need a lot of information to be able to try to reproduce something that a generative AI has produced. And the why is also important, and the why is also related to the last point. I'm going to that later. The third consideration, mostly when you are using traditional AI systems, is this on the training data, okay? Training data usually is available, but sometimes it's not. But with something that is not mostly not available is something on the data quality assessment process that you perform on your data, okay? Particularly on completeness and representation of different populations. And I should say that we should enforce fair data principles on these training data whenever possible, okay? Because I understand that privacy is always a key issue, and sometimes you are not able to publish or to show, but we should enforce this also. And actually now I'm working on how to publish data quality assessment methodologies and measures on open data and making them open to the community, because I think it's a key issue. Finally, and not less important, we in the AI world, in the generative AI world and in the traditional AI world, we are very, very used to measuring accuracy or performance of our solutions. But considering that these kind of methodologies consume a lot of resources, I think that we should start to think about the trade-off between you improve your solution or you improve the baseline, the state-of-the-art method by just a tiny 1%. Is it worth it? Is it worth it to spend a lot of money, resources, natural resources, just to improve this by a tiny 1%? Because we can see it nowadays. We are going to a wild race into, I don't know, I'm improving this method. And I think that we should be conscious on the impact that this can have on the planet and on the life of everyone. So that is something that I think we should start thinking of and trying to ask researchers to think of it and to give insights on what they think about this particular issue. Okay.
Thank you so much. That's the environment is an important subject when we discuss AI here and uses of AI here at NSF as well. Michael.
Just very quickly to latch on to what Lorena just said about disclosure of the use of AI when submitting research proposals. We're wrestling with this, and my question, again, no solutions here, but more questions is, what do you do with that? So if a researcher, if we, for example, have a policy that you must disclose that you've used AI in the production of this of an application, do you keep that information anonymous, i.e., you don't pass it on to peer reviewers? Do you use it for statistical reasons? Do you then or employ a AI detection system to see where it's being used? These are the questions that we're wrestling with because it can introduce bias in the review system if, let's say, there was the disclosure and the peer reviewers, see that and say, okay, this is not the original work or anything like that. So just putting it out there that it's a very important consideration right now, and be happy to hear other views, either here or offline. And last thing about Lorraine mentioned something very, very interesting at the end there. Things need to be fit for purpose. Sometimes we use a bulldozer to pick a daisy. These generative AI tools are great, but there are many other, even AI or algorithmic tools that are much more amenable to use cases. And we shouldn't be spring-loaded to look at the latest and greatest large language model. So I'm glad you mentioned that there.
Thank you. Patricia, did you have thoughts too? No? Okay. Yes. Uh-oh. I'm not sure. I'm not good at reading lips. So, but I will say that in the US, we have a standard mechanism for gathering some of that information. It's a standard use case format. And so in some ways we have started to, the use case format tells us whether there's privacy information involved, talks a little bit about the training data that would be involved. So there's a framework for the kinds of questions we should at least be asking when evaluating the various the AI use cases that are submitted for implementation. So there is some work going on there, but there's a lot of still, it's uncharted territory in many regards. So thank you for all of that. Michael, how can STI funding agencies benefit from the use of AI in research project funding processes and enabling infrastructure?
Yeah, this is a fairly broad question, and Also a bit timely because I just returned from OECD meetings. I'm part of a group that looks at the management of administrative research funding data. And just as an overview, there are 20 plus country participants in this group, and almost all of them are either exploring or deploying AI tools in their processes. And so the majority of them are not employing large language models, and the issues that have been raised around the panel today really highlight that the generative AI hype, I would say, has subsided a little bit, which is, in my opinion, it's good news. It has its place, and like my previous intervention, we have to have things that are fit for purpose, but also appropriate for the use case. So large language models, for the most part, because they are resource intensive. And Lorena's comment about the massive amounts of computing power, in fact, the environment, but more pragmatically, within the respective funding agencies, we may not have the resources to access those models, those tools, and we're talking primarily about cloud-based tools, as well. So there's what was the focus then? A lot on natural language processing. So if we think about what our line of business, there's a lot of text associated with what we collect, the data we collect. So use cases such as screening, AI is very useful. And again, not large language models, but using more lightweight classical models can very quickly do things like access, look at things like eligibility criteria, things on completeness. So these things, these types of use cases reduce administrative workload in the funding agency. Natural language processing, I mentioned, can assist. And here's the key word, and I think, Dorothy, you mentioned it, keep the human in the loop. But AI is very good at looking at patterns and searching for things that you ask it to search for. So looking at highlighting key information, assisting reviewers by organizing content, and these do not take these tools can be developed in-house on very lightweight models that can be done on a laptop, for example, and a very competent data scientist. The other use case is on categorization. So machine learning models are very good if you train them well to look at things like and to classify, let's say it's research proposals by research area, for example, on perhaps looking at impact. And so from a process point of view, this helps funding agencies prioritize reviews and to stream them. If, let's say, we use a committee model to evaluate research proposals, well, we want to put those applications in the right evaluation committee. So, AI can help with that, but again, we want to keep the human in the loop on this. The human makes the final decision, because where a research proposal is placed has a very large bearing on the evaluation itself. I'll move into data analytics because I think AI has a very good there are very good use cases for analytics. So it can look at our previous funding data to look at things like success rates, impact of proposals, and so these predictive models can help in terms of allocation of resources. So budgeting, some very mundane things, from a funding agency point of view, but very important because as governments, we do have financial cycles that this may not be interesting for computer scientists, but we do have to maximize the funding that goes out, and we have to have effective budgeting forecasting to do that. We talked a lot about bias and bias in terms of training models, but want to take the reverse and to say that AI systems can be employed to look for bias. So if you think about from funding agency point of view, we have, and I'm sure you all have as well, archived all of your information on your peer review. So the one thing that AI is really good at is to look for patterns, and bias is can be very subtle. So statistical methods done manually are very time intensive, but if you employ now machine learning type, not LLMs, machine learning can start to identify those faint signals and can help in identifying, because let's face it, it's the humans that introduce the bias. So the peer review system, I think, is not immune to that. It's based on human decision making, and thus there's bias there that may not be apparent by just looking at the data in a using descriptive statistics, for example, or even some classical regression models. But using machine learning can now identify where bias can occur, and maybe as funding agencies we could do something about that. I have a whole list, but I think I'll stop there because there are so many different use cases for this. And what I'll end with is that, and to reinforce the need that, yes, we can employ AI, but we also need to understand that data quality is paramount before going to use these systems. Security, privacy, development of models is paramount, but we also have to be willing to share the tools that we develop. I think that's critical in terms of cooperation, and it's also synergistic in terms of how we can use these tools that we develop, and to go back to the example of the training of LLMs. If we develop models, that they should be open and transparent for the purposes of open science, but also to enhance our development of these things. So I'll leave it there and open up to questions, and hopefully there's solutions to other solutions that others can suggest.
Thank you, Michael. I heard some great use cases there. The grouping of proposals by subject area using large language models. At NSF, we have also suggesting reviewers. So if we have a group of proposals and we're trying to find the right reviewers. One that we're looking into right now is conflict of interest checking to ensure that the people that we are, because it would be mainly because it would be a big time saver for all of the people across the agency, and it's something that people don't have a proprietary way of working. What we see in the National Science Foundation is that, for example, when people go to assemble a panel of reviewers, they all have their ways of doing it. So pushing too hard or automating a way of suggesting reviewers isn't as favorable. The community isn't as likely to adopt a tool like that as they would be conflict of interest, it just seems like a paperwork exercise for them. Are there other topic areas that people are working on within their agencies to further improve their business processes using AI? Data science is certainly one, data analytics. So thank you for that. We do have one external question or comment before we go on to our final question. So Paloma, do you want to share that with us?
Yes, thank you, Dorothy. We actually have a new question, so we have two questions.
Okay.
I will read them out loud because they're not too long. The first one is about our position as a region in terms of developing versus consuming AI tools. And the second one is about the risks of using AI for project evaluation, and which is one of the main bottlenecks for funding agencies.
Does anyone want to take the first question about? I mean, certainly we try to buy solutions rather than build them if we can. So I don't know if that's common. So the data scientists are building their own small single-use algorithms, but for the larger applications, in fact, we're looking at a AI platform as a service, and what that would be a way of tying together the various AI components so that the long tail. So there's a huge cost. People can create a model or an application sort of quickly using AI tools. There's even low-code, no-code AI products coming to the market. So everyone's going to be able to develop their own AI solution. But the problem is that over time, in order to keep monitoring their accuracy and their performance, there's a huge cost to sustaining these over time and being sure that they are as smart on day 100 as they are on day 1, et cetera. So we are looking at an AI platform as a service, which is a thing we would buy. Michael.
So I think it's a combination of both for us. So the development of focused AI tools for a very specific use case, but we're also exploring how to use, well, I'll name it out loud, Microsoft Copilot, because our administrative tool is based off of Microsoft 365. So the insertion of the general purpose AI there, so very similar use case. You mentioned, Dorothy, coding or asking in plain language to help with a number of administrative processes, and also they help with coding as well for our data scientists.
Exactly, coding is one of the great use cases. Lorena?
Yes, I think listening to you about the particular use case of using AI in different scenarios for the agencies. And I think that it would be nice to have a kind of a cooperation, would be regional cooperation, to try to produce tiny tools, like Michael said, because large language models in some cases are not so large. So maybe it's quite, I know it's feasible to do it for specific tasks, and also taking into consideration privacy, etc., etc. Because one thing that we are all aware of it is that people is using ChatGPT or commercial tools to do these things, because they are useful, but this has a lot of risk. For example, if you are evaluating a project, okay, how you are not allowed to put the source of the proposal into ChatGPT. You shouldn't do that.
Right, you shouldn't.
And that particular case you mentioned, Dorothy, of conflict of interest, I think it's a very nice project, but maybe the solution is not a generative AI solution. Maybe it's something more rule-based, more traditional AI systems. Maybe something with an ontology or something like that, because you have to tell the system which are conflict cases in your scenario, and to train an LLM with that information, I don't imagine how can you do that, because it's example based on contextual information on that people and things that change with time also. So very interesting.
Yes, thank you. So remember, we also, a human would always be in the loop. So it would just be a suggestion. It would come back and say, hey, these are people that might have a conflict or that are likely to have a conflict, and you need to look closely at those. Patricia.
Yes, I just want to think. I want to say that particularly what you say, Lorena, about how we also have this challenge probably to develop more tiny tools, more specific tools to solve some specific issue. I mean, all the time the tendency in all discussion is to imagine, like you say, to create a big tool, like a big solution. And I think definitely that's one debate. For example, I also share with you that I'm part of this Latin American network of research in AI feminist AI. That's indeed is a one continued question in the group. Is led by Paola Ricarte in the Text of Monterrey. This particular network developed different type of projects during the last 3 years with this kind of objective in mind, how we can thought about local, even using feminist or gender approach principle to develop some solutions, some proposals based on AI, generative AI in major cases. And from that experience, really, because the projects are ongoing, many of them start as a research and then became a prototype. Many of them are already exist. We are in a kind of prototype testing period. So the thing is, I think that's for me is one way to approach to this major challenge. How we can think, for example, for our national agency, but also I'm thinking in the universities and also as a researcher, professors that are trying to understand how all this is probably going to change our way to present projects, no? Because as indeed, for example, in Chile, we are struggling with another discussion about how, for example, we need to modernize the typical, for example, group of studies. There are many fields emerging in this area that, for example, you don't match in the traditional I don't know, set of list of what is going to be ubicate your research. So that kind of things, I think it will be a major issue. And I think another aspect that you mentioned also is also the development that we are having in many of our countries about data governance, because the issue about open data, for example, in many universities, and particularly, for example, in Chile, is regional or more small universities are not solved yet. It's an ongoing challenge for the teams in terms of competence, in terms of preparation, in terms of education. So many of these things are also not solved yet, I think.
Yes, I agree. I think particularly the concept of how to share data, what's appropriate data sharing, how do we obfuscate the data so that we can share it and use it without disclosing anything that we wish to keep private. That would be a whole 2-hour conversation, I think. And Michael's into that because he's the data guy. So, but I do want to just repeat the second question from the audience before we go forward and just see if anyone has a thought on this. The question is, what are the risks of using AI for project evaluation, which is one of the main bottlenecks for funding agencies? I don't know that we have that particular issue where we are. So does anyone else want to try and answer? Yes, Michael.
The biggest issue here is that while AI tools can help in the review process, they are also available out in the wild. It's available, and reviewers. If I think Lorena, you mentioned this. The transmission of any part of the proposal is puts at risk the custody of the data. So I think any cloud-based tools in the wild are definitely not allowed, and I know a number of countries have and funding agencies have banned it. And we are in the process of posting guidance to say the same thing. But there is an opportunity here if you can create in a self-contained, something on let's say a tenant that is secure, so that your reviewers have access to that. Then that's a possibility, but you still have to navigate data sovereignty, data residency. Make sure that if something as simple as a server, if it's outside of your country and the data is transmitted from, let's say, Canada to the US or Canada to another country, for example, that that doesn't contravene privacy, confidentiality rules, that are pretty fundamental to the security and privacy of that data. So it's not trivial because we are exploring that, but there are a number of hurdles to jump through before employing systems such as this.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We have one final question, and I'm going to ask everybody and I'm going to go in the same order that we introduced people. So Gaston's going to go first. And the question is, does your agency or country have an AI policy? If so, does it regulate AI use in general or in terms of STI? Gaston.
Yes, well, on the national level, we don't have an AI policy. We had a change of government by December last year. Up until December last year, we used to adopt UNESCO's recommendation, which interesting the most I think big issue in the UNESCO recommendation is try to aim for an equitable distribution of technological benefits. So that I think used to be our main guiding line up until this change of government. Starting this year, we are now with a new current government, which is actually defunding research, is defunding science. It's also attacking public universities, which are quality and free here and are also part of our cultural identity. So I think that the whole context is like we're probably not gonna see that those type of regulations in the next years. We are probably gonna be perhaps only left to try to cooperate with big tech companies, and I think that cooperation so far has not been that good. Because although for starters, I'm gonna talk from my experience as a researcher. I'm not speaking from on behalf of the agency, but from my experience as a researcher, the things that we could do is try to perhaps have or claim or ask for free credits to work on cloud computer, for example. And I think that model is actually not good. I think that model has a lot of issues, specifically in terms of data and technological sovereignty. And also I think that's kind of a defensive move. That's a very small move. I think that we should aim for a much more bolder move, which is trying to create our own platform, trying to create our own models, and also trying to create our own cloud systems, which is something that we have some scarce and fragmented initiatives. For example, the government of the province of Buenos Aires is creating its own cloud infrastructure, which is free to use for the community, but those are very, very limited and scarce initiatives. So I think that's pretty much the big challenge for us.
Thank you. Lorena, sorry. Same question for you.
It's okay. Same question for me. So one thing that it's a constant in our region is change. But we in Uruguay, we are more not the changes hadn't been so dramatic. Uruguay has started something that was a roadmap in AI, formerly a roadmap in big data and data science, and that was published in 2017, 2018, I think. Then we changed the government, and the actual government that it's ending started a process to build this national strategy in artificial intelligence. It was a nice project because they asked all the academia and different actors from different sectors to participate in that. And now it's this strategy. It's on the phase of public consulta pública. I don't know the exact term in English for that. This strategy has three key or specific goals. That is to face something about the governance of AI, and these are the principles to ensure ethical and responsible AI development. This is an extract from the strategy, so it's textual words. Second one is to build capabilities. Okay, we need to build capabilities in infrastructure, in hardware, but also in skills. Okay, and on all over this stack of capabilities that you need to build these users, developers, in researchers, a broad sense of capabilities, and also to try to align this with sustainable development and the goals of sustainable development. Okay. Mm-hmm. This strategy is a broad strategy. It's not a specific law, okay, and it's not specific to the science and technology aspects, okay. But we in our country we also have other laws, okay, that have to do with personal data and other technology related laws that are also taken into consideration in this strategy. The other thing that I would like to add is that these regulations need to be addressed in a regional perspective. So as all the other panelists mentioned. In particular, Mercosur, it's one forum, regional forum where Argentina, Brazil participates, and all other countries from the region. And these things are being now discussed there on regulation and trying to harmonize regulations between countries, okay? Because it wouldn't be feasible to have, it wouldn't be wise to have very different regulations in countries that we are sharing so much, and we are sharing cultural perspectives and possibly sharing data. But it's also something that should be taken into account. And like Gaston said, and in other forums we have mentioned, that would be nice and would be very good to have the possibility to have data sharing platforms conformant with all these privacy and sovereignty things, but that could allow researchers to share data on common problems, because I think that would be very good to produce better solutions. In particular, my country is very small compared to these big players that are Argentina and Brazil, with a population that it's enormous compared to ours. But some of the problems, I don't know, are the same, because we share the same ecosystem in some areas. It's not wise to not share the opportunity to create knowledge from these common problems. So that's it.
Thank you so much, Lorena. Patricia?
Yes, Chile is more or less the same. No, we have right now a national policy of AI that was started to develop in the previous government, but with this new government, they it kind of set some framework, some like they call in the national policy that you can find in the Ministry of Science, which also is a new thing. I mean, in the previous government, Chile created a Ministry of Science and Technology, Innovation and Knowledge, which is kind of a new institutionality for our system. So it's good news, but it's a small ministry yet. It doesn't have a comparison, and has a lot of challenges, I think, which we know that. So the national policy was developed in that sense, I think. With this government, they include, for example, because has main three axes or main three objectives. The first one is to talk about the need of that Chile start to enter in the AI development, as associated as always to development, to the economic production, but also related with the development of talent, education. No, I mean all the capabilities, competences in the citizenship in the Chilean population in general. A part of that, with this new administration, they incorporate another objective, which precisely wasn't discussed enough in the previous one, what is governance and ethics. Nevertheless, some colleagues, some fields indeed make some also critical approaches, because as Lorena also said, we also have a public consultancy last year about this policy, which I think also opened the discussion about what kind of sector or what kind of diversity was included in the first position paper, no? But indeed, that policy probably put more effort in the idea of how we can develop infrastructure, how we can Chile can improve data governance, and also all the things related with education and competences, no? For example, we are now see there are opening like 3 or 2 PhD in artificial intelligence, particularly from regional universities. So that's also something that you can notice, etc. And this year, also, sorry, the last year, at the end of last year, also the government, this administration present their proposal about how to regulate AI system. That's an important thing to say about the GRC. They are not introduced the term of AI model. Or AI in general. They introduced the term AI system. Though the project of law is already ongoing in an ongoing discussion in the Congress. For example, I think that particularly is going to be an important to see how that discussion is going to be, because of course the Congress has to open the public audience to present indications, or to open probably many debates about what consider or not the idea of regulate this all the artificial intelligence, no? But
Yes.
particularly in STI, we don't see yet, and probably I'm wrong because I'm not representative of ANIT, of our national agency. We don't see still, even ANIT, I think is still strengthening all the open data, which is the major challenge, I think, for all the research and academic system today.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Fabio, you only have a few minutes left.
Yeah, so I'll try to be fast. I had a slide, but we'll try to summarize. So basically, I think in Brazil, we have data protection regulations, and agencies are working with those. As far as I know, there are no, I mean, there's a lot of discussion about AI. In the case of FAPESP, which I interact with, because I actually run a research center that is funded by FAPESP. In the case of FAPESP, there's a lot of discussion about using AI. And I think some of the things that Michael said before are discussed all the time. I mean, should we go for generative AI, or should we try something there's like more computer science and more, something we can trust, simple rules and simple techniques. One thing FAPESP has done, though I think maybe interesting, is to train the employees.
Yes.
So they have had workshops. I was there for a day teaching people. So they're trying to teach people what is AI and what can it do. And so I think that's one interesting initiative. As far as Brazil goes, I mean, there's a lot of discussion. There's a project in the Senate. I think Brazil is going for regulation that is more related to the European Union AI Act, which is, I mean, there is a risk-based analysis for every project. Every project has to follow, I mean, lots of rules, actually. I think there are other countries that are going for a more lighter regulation, but this is still under discussion. And most of what happens in Brazil is related to many things that have been said before. So it's concerns and discussion about the risks. But I would say about the benefits as well. I think sometimes people are too negative, but there's a lot of interest in how to use AI to enhance productivity, to make life easier. So there are both sides under discussion. So again, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Michael, do you want to close us out?
Yeah, I'll take maybe a minute to summarize what's some policies in Canada. So the most prominent one is a bill. It's called Bill C-27, and it's called the Artificial Intelligence and Data Act. So it's a bill right now. It's not in force. It was introduced in 2022. And we're encountering the same problems as other countries. We're going to have an election sometime soon, and the bill may die on the vines. But some key notes on the bill highlight the identification of high impact AI systems. So very similar to the EU, where AI systems for safety, AI systems for biometric identification are deemed high risk, just as an example, and they require risk assessments and mitigation measures. Transparency, accountability, and enforcement are also part of the provisions of this new bill and hopefully act. We also have a number of ongoing acts that have AI incorporated into it. For example, the Canadian Human Rights Act speaks to AI systems that it should not result in discriminatory practices based on race, age, and sex. So, and duties to accommodate to make sure that AI applications do not inadvertently disadvantage protected groups. So, there are more, but certainly there's sprinklings of this in policies in Canada. And I'll mention at NSERC, we are finalizing the guidance on the use of generative AI in the production and review of research proposals. And just, in a nutshell, we're basing it on tenets that we've already established on responsible conduct of research, confidentiality, conflict of interest, all the things we've been talking about today. So we're not making up anything new, just making the connections between the use of AI and all these existing policies that have been in force for a really long time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What a great panel. I really had a great time and learned a lot. Thank you so much. Sharpia, do you want to close us?
Yes, thank you, Dorothy. I just wanted, on behalf of the organizing committee, I wanted to thank everyone, Lorena, Patricia, Fabio, Gaston, Michael, and especially Dorothy for the wonderful moderation and for wonderful discussion. It was actually what we looked for. I think AI is here to stay. So it's our thing for as an agencies. We have to make sure that it's used less bias, that the data are provided are correct, etc. So as a funding agencies of science and technology and innovation, I think we can somehow contribute to that. So thank you very much, and we look forward to continuous discussion. And we will continue as an agencies based on our discussion. We will continue this talking about it during our next regional meeting of Americas of the Global Research Council. So we hope, and the next year, this is one of the topics of the next year's GRC annual meeting. So this topic is here. Artificial intelligence is here to stay. So we will try to make efforts to make it get better use of it and make sure that it's has less bias. So thank you very much. I don't know whether Sean or Anna would like to add something. That's I don't see Connie, so it's thank you. And
Sure, I'll just jump in and
yes.
say thank you very much, everybody. Fantastic panel. I think it met our expectations. Thank you. Thank you, Dorothy, for your fantastic moderating. And as Sharpia said, this is one of the thematics for this year's annual meeting of the GRC, which will be held in May, and it will be discussed at all 5 regional meetings this year. there is a discussion paper that has been prepared and that we can circulate to the participants. So please ask us, and we will circulate that to everybody. So thank you again very much. Thank you. Back to you, Sharpia.
Thank you. Anna, would you like to jump and say something?
I just put a very big thank you in the chat. Thank you to all the panelists and for the information. And as Sean was saying, this is very relevant to us for the discussions that are coming next in the annual meeting and to bring this perspective from the Americas. I think you've given us today a lot of things to think about and consider that are very specific to the region of the Americas, and thank you for this. We will feed this into these discussions.
Thank you once again, and we hope to see you in another discussions. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, thanks.
Bye. Bye.